Welcome everyone to Washington Food Coalition Lunch and Learn webinar series, Purchasing from Farmers. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I had these quotes up last month as well. These Lunch and Learn webinar series has kind of come from the Growers Roundtable. All of the stuff that I've been doing this year and we've been doing with Harvest Against Hunger is directly working with farmers to get food into food banks. So here's some quotes from the Growers Roundtable. I'm not going to read them. And some goals for today's webinar is to get some knowledge of purchasing practice that we've been doing in Washington and to give you some tips on starting your own purchasing program. We've got two speakers today, one ex-Harvest Against Hunger Vista alum and one current. Cole Bitzenberg and Lindsay Edmonds are here. This is their information if anybody wants to send them an email. And the outline for today, we're going to go over their purchasing models and they're going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the purchasing pilot we did. Lindsay is going to talk about it as well, but I'll talk about some of the other sites. And then there's some resources and sample contracts, and then at the end we'll have questions. This is how you would ask questions with the chat window. You would just type your message and I'll read it and our presenters can answer them. So let's go ahead and get started. First up we'll have Cole, and I'm going to unmute you so you can talk. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit your slides for you. Are you ready?
Excellent. Yeah,
Hi.
let's do it. Yes, as you can see, I am Cole Bitzenberg, Field to Family Coordinator at Community Action of Skagit County. That is my email. Feel free to email if you want to. All right. So just kind of a brief overview of the purchasing model and kind of how that came to be. So we act as a food distribution center here in Sedro-Woolley for all of Skagit County food banks. And so we don't do much direct service ourselves, but all the food banks come to us for food. So we're kind of like a little regional distribution center. And about 6 years ago, they came up with a means to kind of get this building up and going and on the ground. So there's an actual site with a warehouse, and we have storage and all of that to really work for the food banks well. And I was lucky enough to come in the picture as the final year of the Rotary First Harvest Vista, and that we were really lucky to get that program. I mean, it was a great way to bring in more fresh produce. So we had 3 years of a gleaning coordinator in place, of which I was the third, and that really helped to kind of build the foundation of connections with farmers. So we were getting lots of produce, both gleaned by volunteers and donated by farms, and that was kind of the lead into how the purchasing was elaborated upon, because the gleaners were already making contact with all the farms, so it's kind of a natural progression to make purchases. And with that, we go into the post-Vista years, which is this year. So I got hired on because we were able to justify it with our budgeting committee and writing some grants. We got more funds to put in a full-time position to keep the connections with the farms going and bring in lots of donations and continue our purchasing model. So that way we can get more fresh produce into the food banks. And that leads us to more details on purchasing. Next slide. So it originally started with the Skagit Food Share Alliance, and that was just kind of a connection between a few different local organizations that saw how important farming is to Skagit Valley and how much food there was, and realized there's a natural connection. Why can't some of that food go to the food banks? And so they came up with it as a fundraiser, and that way they could raise some funds so we could purchase from local farms, bring fresh produce direct into the food banks. And that's been a really great fundraiser for us, and hopefully it continues strong because that's provided all of our purchasing power for the past 6 years, I think. And we tend to do what a lot of people will call opportunity buys in terms of how we purchase. So that's more keeping in constant contact with the farmers and seeing what they happen to have an overabundance of, or they had a bunch of seconds of something and they're able to cut a much better deal so that you can get a better price per pound, something that we can make our dollar go a lot further. So we haven't really done contracting because we usually do more of this back-end purchasing, just trying to be an added resource for the farms that for some reason or another aren't able to sell their product to one of their normal markets for whatever reason. And with that, we've kind of, at least it seems there's not a direct correlation in terms of the farmers aren't telling you, hey, you purchased those beets from me when I couldn't get a purchaser for them, so I'm going to give you this huge donation of corn now. But it kind of works out that way. So we've been able to support our farmers whenever we can by purchasing, and they in turn have supported us greatly by giving us large donations. And that's kind of a nice way to make more connections with farmers, is make little purchases, try to get on people's fresh sheets. And yeah, leveraging donations has been huge. I think, for instance, this year we are around 300,000 pounds of donated product, and we only purchased, I think, like 20,000 pounds maybe. Probably not even that much, but yeah. And that's all for this slide. So just to kind of give a little bit of a refinement on how I go about doing the whole farmer relations, I really try to maintain good contact with the farms. So I'm always willing to answer a phone call, email, whatever works best. If it was carrier pigeons, I would have a bunch of pigeons on my roof. But whatever you got to do to maintain relationships, it's all about contact and just being available. So if a farmer says, hey, I've got this product I'd like to donate, but I can't get to you, can you find a way to get here? And you just have to do whatever you can to get to the farmer and be a constant resource for them. So that way they are never afraid to call you if they happen to have a donation. And you can kind of keep them happy by purchasing whenever you can when they offer a product to you. So we try to do that as much as we can, but we do go within reason. So we tell all of our farmers whenever we have a farmer meeting that we try to maintain our price per pound at roughly $1 or under. And I mean, that's just kind of a guideline. There's tons of wiggle room for different specialty products, or I mean, you're not going to pay that much for like cabbage. So that's kind of an important part of being upfront with your farmers, so they know where you are and what you can work with. That way they'll know when to contact you. And yeah, constant contact, availability, and always being there whenever you say you will. So, I mean, farmers can sometimes run late, sometimes they're really prompt, but I know they really appreciate it if you can always be there when you say you're going to, or when your volunteers are going to be there, or what have you. But that's really critical to maintaining happy relationships with farmers. Then my last little tidbit there is find your own purchasing level. So like I said, ours is roughly $1 per pound is kind of our price ceiling. But with that, we also kind of determine how much we're going to purchase each year. So we've kind of set out a target goal of what money we're going to spend, and then we just try to plan out so that we can do bigger purchases early in the season and late in the season. That way we can bring in a little extra product when it's hard to find stuff. And then we can also, help out the farmers whenever we can. But that's kind of the rundown.
Thanks, Cole. That was great. I'm going to remute you. And that was really great. Let's move right along to Lindsay in Colville. I think.
Oh, hi.
There you go. I think you're already unmuted.
Yeah. Did you see my question that I had for Cole?
I did. I was thinking we would address questions at the end of the webinar. Is that okay?
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So my name is Lindsay Edmonds. I am over here in Colville, Washington, working with Providence New Hunger Coalition, which actually stands for Northeast Washington, just in case you're wondering. Yeah, you can also get a hold of me anytime. So that's my very long email address. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So I am the first Vista that was placed here through the Harvest Against Hunger program, and I am actually kind of in a really neat spot. I work out of the WSU Extension office, and then Providence New Hunger Coalition is an organization that was founded through the hospital here. So it's a lot of good resources at my fingertips to build the Harvest Against Hunger program here. So the coalition started about 3 years ago when the healthcare system was just seeing a lot of health-related issues dealing with hunger, especially Stevens County being one of the poorest counties in Washington. So then they just kind of brought together all these stakeholders and all the food banks and started to address the gaps in services. And their focus is really just stabilizing the food distribution system and just building capacity for all these organizations that are mostly volunteer-based. So it's been a really fun year, learning a lot of different things. And when the Hunger Coalition was founded, one of the first needs that all the food banks said they needed was more fresh food, fresh produce, and they also see those health issues and concerns in their clients, and they wanted to help solve that issue. So one of the initiatives that this program here took was getting a Harvest Against Hunger program in Vista placed here. So hence me. So going to move on to the next slide. So it was actually a really great foundation to start the Harvest Against Hunger program here. Was we got $4,000 awarded to us by the Washington Food Coalition. So it was an opportunity to reach out to even more growers and get their interest and really show them that, we're not here just asking for donations. We very much do care about agriculture in this area. And, that one quote that was at the beginning of the slide talking about how farmers would be in the food banks lines if they didn't grow their own food. And that is very much the case here in Stevens County. We have very small farmers, mostly just family run. And they're just really doing what they believe in, and it's really hard for them to grow and market and sell all of their produce. So it was a really great opportunity to see how we could make this $4,000 work for our food banks and also work for all of the local growers in this area. So I tried to cast as wide a net as possible and we partnered with 5 different growers, 2 orchards and 3 veggie growers, and really made the program adapt to each of those growers. So we had a grower that it's just him on his farm, and he's growing. He wanted to spend more time on his farm and grow as much food as possible, so he just would have more to sell and not spend 3 days a week at markets. So this program worked for him because he was able to cut back his market days because we bought so much food from him. We had another grower that just had no labor, no resources to harvest an enormous orchard crop this year. So we purchased the product for a very, very low price, but we provided the labor and went in and harvested it. So we just really tried to learn about all the different kinds of programs and how they can work for each grower here. So that was the goal and intention of this year, to see which would be the best way to pursue this program in the future. and also like establish a system. We do have rural resources, which they deliver food to the food banks in our area about once a month, but it's not really consistent with the amount of fresh produce coming in. Obviously, produce can't sit in a warehouse for a month before it goes out to the food banks. So working on building a more efficient system where the food banks are also involved with, getting more fresh produce more regularly and learning how they have access to that. So you can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Cole talked a lot about donation being tied with purchasing, and we very much saw that this year. We brought in over 17,000 pounds for our first year at the Harvest Against Hunger program, and that was pretty astounding. It definitely blew my expectations out of the water, and 75% of what we received this year came from our partner growers that we purchased from. So those are just some of the price points that we spent with the different growers and what they donated versus what they purchased. Just kind of an interesting comparison. So yeah, you can go ahead and move on to the next one. And so basically what I took away from this year were the things that still need to be worked on are the transportation. All the food banks that are in the most need are the ones that are the furthest from the farms, which isn't very surprising, but it takes a lot of time to get to those food banks when the food is fresh and making sure that, the farmer trusts us to make sure that this food isn't just wasted, that it's somewhere where it needs to go, and then also lining that up with the food banks and the amount of time that they're open and where they're located. It's still a system that's evolving and that we're working on building better relationships with. And then volunteer capacity. So we bought 1,000 pounds of cherries this year, and I had never harvested cherries before, so it was a learning experience of knowing exactly how much labor that takes and knowing what you can ask from your volunteers or what base of volunteers I would need to actually make that a fun project instead of kind of a daunting one. So just knowing your volunteers, knowing how much you can purchase and that you can be relied upon to harvest, and that we picked 400 pounds of green beans this year from Simple Gifts Farm, and that was a great project. We were out there once a week, and we had a bunch of different groups come out with us, and it wasn't as stressed as the cherries were because they were going to be there for so long. So just kind of learning about that and how we can work that into our volunteer base. And then flexibility in delivery, that was one thing I heard over and over from a lot of the farmers this year was it was just nice for them to be able to deliver what we purchased and donations on the time when they had excess or they had abundance, and we were willing. We have 13 food banks, so there was never any time where we didn't have a place to send food or one food bank had more food than they could handle. So that was something that the farmers really appreciated, was just knowing that there wasn't deadlines on when they had to deliver, just by the end of the season. And then we just started seeing more and more donations after that because we already had a system and they had my phone number and they knew that was a reliable person that would be there to pick up food if they weren't able to bring it into town. So, and farmer market participation, I actually found that was the place where I met the majority of the farmers that were interested and willing to work with our program and could find a way that it worked best for them. They really appreciated just seeing my face at the farmers market every week, and I would sometimes set up a booth and talk to people and engage the community there. Just that presence really helped the program, I believe. And we also started a farmers market glean, and that was something that the farmers asked for. They just started asking me after farmers market if I would want to take some produce to the food banks for them. So it took out another step of donation for them and just kind of built relations, and it definitely helped build our program. So yeah, that's all my input. Oh yeah, what's next? So we just finished our last Growers Roundtable meeting of this year, and we'll have 2 more in the spring. But we had 14 growers come out to 2 different events that we had this winter, and just got some of their feedback. And it was definitely like we partnered with WSU Extension, so Harvest Against Hunger, and learning about different ways that the purchasing program would work for different growers, and also gleaning. And they're able to hear stories about, from other growers about how the program worked for them and why it worked for them. And it started some wheels turning. And we had one grower that said that he just likes the connection with the people that he grows for. So if we could fund 20 families that could get a CSA and they would come to the farmer's market and he would give them a box of food every week, that would be his way that he would love to start a purchasing program. So just kind of getting their general feedback about how it worked for them, and what they thought of this year and any advice that they have on moving forward. So we had a lot of really constructive advice come out of those meetings, and it was also just a really good relationship building, and just very much a community here. So it was nice to get everyone together, and they're all very excited to kind of celebrate at the end of the season and talk about how agriculture is growing in this area and the different support systems that the Hunger Coalition and WSU Extension can offer. And then local fundraising. The Hunger Coalition is very committed to at least raising $4,000 again, so that we can purchase from the same growers we purchased from this year that have expressed that they want this program again and they want this opportunity, because it really worked out for them. So we are committed to building fundraising. We have a gala event in February that we're going to be highlighting the farmers and asking for donations, and then we're also just researching different ways that will be an effective way to fundraise in this community. And another part of the purchasing is a lot of the growers ask that we kind of contact them in the winter months before instead of the spring, so that they can plan better and they can plant more food and know that it's not just going to go to waste, or they won't be able to call somebody if they need help harvesting. So they just ask for that heads up and the better opportunity to plan for both our program and for the growers. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. That was great.
You're welcome.
So those were two really good purchasing models that we heard from. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Cardos. I work at the Washington Food Coalition. I'm also a Harvest Against Hunger Vista, just like Lindsay is and Cole was last year. So this year we were able to secure some funding through the Washington State Department of Agriculture. We got $12,000, and we used the money to split up between 3 of the sites, the Harvest Against Hunger sites. So Colville, which we've heard from Lindsay, Carnation, that was Hope Link, and then Clark County Food Bank. So they each got $4,000, and total there was 11 farms in the pilot project. All 3 sites kept really good records and completed a survey. I put together a summary that I actually sent out with the invite to this webinar. So if you received that email, you should have had a summary there at the bottom of that email. I'm also going to be working on some best practices as well to complete a document. So here's the final graph for the 3 sites. The blue one is how much produce they purchased, and then how much they actually received in purchasing donations and gleans. Carnation had a relationship with both of the farms that they worked with already, so their numbers are off the charts. But it's great to see the totals. So purchasing from farmers is really good, and it was a really nice, successful project that we did this year. The 2 other locations, Carnation, she worked with 2 farms, and she received a fresh sheet from them, and she would purchase from the fresh sheet, and the the CSAs would donate to the food banks. And then also in Clark County, they chose 4 small farms who were just starting out, and they set up contracts ahead of time. So let's see. So I've already talked about the summary that I sent out and the best practices document as well. I wanted to share the contract that we used, and also a contract that you can use if you're looking to purchase from farmers, or just to look at to get some ideas. It's from the Bellingham Food Bank. So this one is for their seed money program sample contract. And this webinar will be on the Washington Food Coalition website, so you can review it. And also, I can send you sample, or if you want to reach out to Max in Bellingham, he could probably send you a contract sample as well. And then this is for the Food Bank Fresh program. So I think we're going to take questions now. We already had one from Lindsay. She was directing it to Cole. Can everybody see this? She asks, Cole, do you have volunteers that are designated drivers to go to the farms and pick up produce when it's available? So I guess I have to unmute him for his answer.
I do have volunteer drivers that I use to go do pickups at the farms, and a lot of it depends on the volunteer availability. And then I'm, in the summer, constantly driving around, leading gleans and picking up produce. And you just kind of build a map in your head, and you can link up a bunch of pickups all at once.
Okay, great, thank you. If anybody else has questions, please feel free to type it in the chat window for either Lindsay, me, or Cole, and we'll just give it, 5 minutes or so, 3 to 5 minutes, to see if there's any other questions that come in. Okay, we have another question from Benjamin. This one is directed to Lindsay. What was the biggest challenge about the purchasing program that you had?
I would say transportation, most definitely. I was driving a lot this summer, and there's definitely a lot of food banks to get the food to. It was just difficult to get it there when they were open, and just transportation. It was a lot of driving and trying to build the volunteer base at the same time as gleaning and trying to coordinate all the food was a little bit challenging.
Sounds like it. I'm going to keep talking and start to wrap up if anybody else has any questions. Okay, we have one from Karen. Do all of you purchase produce as well as glean, is what she is asking to both of you guys.
Yes, we did this year. We don't have funding for next year yet.
Yeah, we purchased about $10,000 worth a year.
That's a lot. Cool. So feel free to, awesome. From Benjamin, what would the minimum amount be for a useful purchasing project?
I think that depends on your audience, like how many food banks you're going for. So that's really hard to say.
And the size of the farms in your area. I would say probably between 4,000 and 8,000 for Colville would suffice.
Oh, and then to answer Karen, that funding comes from our Vitus Gadget fundraiser that we have every summer. So, yeah.
All right, and then Marlene asks, what were the factors you considered when first contracting farmers or contacting farmers? How decided? How did you decide to contact what farmers?
Well, mine was really easy. I was new here, and there's a farm to table guide with like 40 farmers in it. So I just started calling people and going to the farmers markets and talking to people and asking their feedback, and um, that was really it.
Yeah, I was lucky to already have a lot of existing contacts from the previous gleaning vistas, and then just kind of looking up online what farms were in the area that we didn't have contact with. And then I know the extension, WSU Extension office is in a great resource to kind of connect with farmers too, because they have a lot of connections.
Awesome, thanks guys. So you can still write in questions if you have any more. I'm gonna go on to the next slide. So for additional resources, we've got the produce recovery guide on the Order Your First Harvest website. There's tons of great information on gleaning practices, how to start a gleaning program, and other best practices around the state that the Harvest Against Hunger vistas have done in the last 5 years. Northwest Harvest has a Growing Connections out. This is the link for that as well. It is basically all about how to reach out to farmers, how to purchase from farmers, and just generally how to work with farmers. It's a really awesome resource as well. And then on our website, we have some training manuals and some information on the Good Samaritan Law. And I'll ask on Benjamin's behalf to everyone, any recommendations for gleaning groups, food banks that do not have a budget to purchase from farms to take first steps to start a purchasing project or a pilot one, even on a small scale?
If I would say if there's no funding for it yet, I would reach out to the churches in the area and see if maybe they would be willing to sponsor like 4 to 5 families that would get CSAs from local growers. I think that would be a good way to start that connection. Or, yeah, I think that's one idea.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to get things fired up, Lindsay. And other than that, just reaching out to service organizations in the community, looking at where people have gotten little grants or awards. If there's co-ops in the area, sometimes they'll have award programs that you can apply through, and really doing anything to get a little bit of funding to get started.
And hi, this is Julie Washburn with Washington Food Coalition. Something else I'll add too, part of the purpose for these pilot projects and the resources that we're developing from them is to put together materials that others can use. So obviously when you're talking about purchasing with funding, then there needs to be some sort of funding support. I love Lindsay's idea to kind of start small with a few CSA boxes. That's a fantastic, really bite-sized way to get it going, and hopefully could grow from there. But whether you're starting something really small like that, or you're looking for a larger pool of funding, the resources that will come out of this, this presentation, the document with best practices on purchasing, showing the return, not just necessarily the first year, but maybe over time on establishing these relationships. We'd love to be a resource. You can use this information when you're going to a funder to say, look how well this works. Look at all of the added benefits as well. beyond just the purchasing, and even beyond the gleaning and the way that it helps the local economy and all of that. There's a lot of really great benefits to point out. So we'd love to be a resource to help make that funding case, whether you're starting with a few CSA boxes or wanting to go big and launch an all new program.
And Julie, would you direct funding like towards like federal funding or like local organizations that offer grants, or which way would you prefer to
As
go?
far as a funding resource,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think it would depend on what relationships you have and what scale you're trying to start at. So, say you think you have worked with farmers, but you want to move into purchasing, you have really strong connections in the community, you have a really great connection to those local farmers. There might be opportunities with some federal funding. It's obviously a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more involved process and high competition, but you might be in a position where you could, like I say, launch an all new program with some federal funding. But if it's something where you're just getting started in this type of work and you're looking to start with a few local CSAs, like you mentioned, just sponsoring a few families, that would be better suited for some local community funding, a local church, local service groups, like you both mentioned, just to sort of get it off the ground. So it sort of, the short answer is it depends. I mean, if you can go big, that's excellent. And what might make more sense, though, is to start with some kind of local bite-sized work on sponsoring a certain number of families. Once you can show the value of that, then grow it maybe over a couple of years. Because that's one thing that what we've done so far seems to show that the return on investment is has an exponential effect, where the first year you might not hit it out of the park with the donations and gleaning that you get in addition to the purchasing. So starting small and growing from there seems to be a good way to go, although each community is different. So with that said, starting small, if you're starting small, the local community support is probably the best way to go. And then if you move to where you need some bigger dollars to support a larger program, then either some sort of regional funders, whether it be foundations or corporations, and then moving into some federal dollars if it's big enough to be impressive enough to give the numbers you need for those grants. So that's not a hard and fast answer, but hopefully some information that's helpful.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for answering questions and asking questions and just joining the webinar. Next one is going to be on January 9th after the holidays are over. It's on working with volunteers, and our host is Susie McNeely. She's great at working with volunteers. She's going to be a great resource for the webinar. And feel free to ask any more questions before we go. If you got one or two, that would be great. Otherwise, we can just wrap up. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay, Cole, Julie, for speaking and making it a great webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody.